नमो तस् भगवतो अरहतो सम्मा संबुद्धस्स। नमो तस् भगवतो अरहतो सम्मा संबुद्धस्स। नमो तस् भगवतो अरहतो
सम्मा
सम्मा संबुद्धस्स. So today we will be studying the part 5, the part 4 of the book 5 of the Buddhist Dhamma, and we will continue to explore the Sangha. And as we have seen that Baba Ambedkar has arranged the material in such a way that he talked about the Buddha, he talked about the Dhamma, and in this part book 5 of the Buddhist Dhamma, Baba Ambedkar is talking about the Sangha. And we have so far covered part 3, and today we are going to look at the part 4, which is titled as the Bhikkhu and the Laity. And the question of Bhikkhu and the Laity is very important for the future of Buddhism, or to understand the various responsibilities of the Bhikkhu and the Laity. So in this part 4, which is titled as the Bhikkhu and the Laity, the part 4 is divided into 3 subparts, and they are titled as subpart 1, the bond of arms, mutual influence, Dhamma of the Bhikkhu, and the Dhamma of the Upasaka. So this is in 3 parts. And like all the important parts in the Buddhist Dhamma, this part is also very important if we have to study the Sangha. And what I'm going to do, because this is such an important thing and just a few pages, I'm going to read through the sections, and I'm going to then talk about the intricate parts and gloss over some of the things which are very important for us to understand. So the section 1 begins with the bond of arms. And this is a very important term, the bond of arms, because we know that it was a practice of the bhikkhus to go out every day in the world and beg for the food. And the word meaning, the meaning of the word bhikkhu is not a beggar, it's a sharer, is somebody who shares the Dhamma. And in returns, he shares the food of other people. So the term, I think the term employed here is very beautiful, the bond of arms. So there is a bond between the bhikkhu and the monks, and that bond is of the arms. The bhikkhu depends on the upasaka for their very survival, for the food. And this term explains, how important it is to have this bond. So after understanding the sense or the implication of the title of the subpart, the bond of arms, we will look into what does it mean in the Buddhist context. So the verse number 1 goes like this: the Sangha was an organized body, the membership of which was not open to all. So this is very significant that the Sangha was an organized body and the membership was not open to all. In a sense of an organized body, the membership was not open to all, but in terms of the principle of the Sangha was open to all. It was open to all the people, whether, irrespective of their backgrounds, irrespective of their caste, their gender, their class. The Sangha was open to all. But the membership was qualified membership. And there was a process, as we have seen, to become the member of the Sangha. So the verse number goes on explaining that to be a mere parivrajaka was not enough to give the parivrajaka membership of the Sangha. So even if you are left your house and you are practicing of your own, the life of a homeless, and we have seen how the Buddha organized the disorganized body of the wanderers into the Sangha. So to be mere a parivrajaka was not enough to acquire the membership of the Sangha. It is only after the parivrajaka has obtained upasampada that he could become a member of the Sangha. So upasampada is very important to become the member of the Sangha. And we have seen that, there was the Shramanera, and they have to undergo certain training. and after completion of certain training, they can ask for the permission, and then they become the part of the Sangha. Only when they have obtained Upasampada. The Sangha was an independent body. This is a very important point. The Sangha was an organized body and the Sangha was an independent body. It was independent even of its founder. This is very important. Even the Buddha was not supposed to undermine the Sangha. It was independent of its founder. And we have seen that, anything offered to the Buddha was giving it back to the Sangha. So the Sangha was independent of its founder. So the organized body was the independent body and it was independent of even its founder. It's very profound. So Sangha could stand of its own. And 5, very important point, it was autonomous. It could admit anyone it liked to its membership. It could dismember any member, provided it acted in accordance with the rules of the Vinaya Pitaka. So, if, it could admit anyone, that was the power of the Sangha. It was autonomous. It could admit anyone it liked to its membership, and it could dismember if the people were not found to be acting in accordance with the rules of Vinaya. You see, these are the principles of organization that we have to bear in mind. Isn't it? The supremacy of the organized body, of the independent body, the autonomy of the body, and this is very important. These principles can be helpful to us even today to think about how the people can be organized. The only cord which bound the bhikkhu to the laity was arms. So that was the only bond that struck the two entities together, the body of the laities and the body of the upasakas. The bhikkhus depended upon alms, and it is the laity who gave them. The laity was not organized. Very important. The Sangha was organized. The monks and the nuns were organized, and eventually only the monks were organized. The Bhikshuni Sangha was gone, but the Upasaka and Upasikas were not organized. When, even at the beginning of his career, the Buddha talked about the fourfold Sangha. The laities were not organized. And this is a very revolutionary point that, Baba Sahib brings it forth. There was a Dhamma-Diksha, or a ceremony for marking the initiation of a person in the Sangha. So we know that there was a Dhamma-Diksha where the people were marked that they have initiated into the Sangha. And the Dhamma-Diksha included both initiation into the Sangha as well as into the Dhamma. But there was no separate Dhamma-Diksha for those who wanted to be initiated into the Dhamma but did not wish to become members of the Sangha. One of the consequences of which was to go from home into homelessness. So this is very important, that there was a Dhamma-Diksha which included the Dhamma-Diksha, but there was nowhere what is called the Dhamma-Diksha who wanted to be initiated into the Dhamma but did not wish to become the members of the Sangha, and one of the consequences of which was to go from home into homelessness. So if you become a monk, if you become a bhikkhu, the consequence was that you had to leave your home and become homeless. And the verse number 12 is very revolutionary. We have to understand it in the context. This was a grave omission. The lack of Dhamma-Diksha was a grave omission. It was one of the causes which ultimately led to the downfall of the Buddhism in India. Because the laities couldn't have been organized because there was no Sangha-Diksha, there was no Dhamma-Diksha, there was only Sangha-Diksha. And this was a grave omission. It was one of the causes which ultimately led to the downfall of Buddhism in India. For this absence of the initiation ceremony left the laity free to wander from one religion to another, and worse still follow at one and the same time. So, because there was no, Diksha, there was no initiation ceremony for the people to be in the Dhamma, when the Sangha declined, which eventually did in India, and the Buddhists made some efforts. Baba Ambedkar describes it as beautifully as to how the laities made efforts in order to keep the flame alive, but it couldn't be sustained for a long time. And, it's one of the reasons, because there was this unorganized body of the laities and there was no Sangha-Diksha. Now, in the revolutionary act that Baba Ambedkar did on 14th October 1956, he instituted what is called the Dhamma-Diksha. And the Dhamma-Diksha is so important that it makes us commit to the vision of the Buddha and the Sangha. We in other words, we become committed to following the Dhamma, to become our own light and make that light shine throughout the world in terms of the Sangha. So awaken that light within and spread that light throughout the world. And that's only possible if we commit ourselves to what is called the Sangha, Dhamma. And therefore the Dhamma-Diksha is very important. And Baba Ambedkar had this vision of conducting Dhamma-Diksha throughout India. And he encouraged the Buddhists to conduct the Dhamma-Diksha. You see, this is what had been lacking in Buddhism, because if you look at the other religions, they have certain definite ceremonies to mark their initiation into the religions. For example, the Muslims have what is called the ceremony of circumcision, and similarly, the Christians have a ceremony where they initiate the young ones into their religion, the baptism, and likewise. In Hinduism, there is no ceremony like that for the majority of the people. But for the Trivarna, the Savarnas, there is a ceremony of what is called Upanayan, wearing the sacred thread, which marks their initiation into Savarna Vedism. But when it comes to the large population, even of in India today, this is completely, we can say that they don't have any ceremony. They are just by the convention carrying forth the flag of Hinduism. There is no ceremony for the majority of the people in this country to be called whatever Hindus, and in Buddhism it was not there. So Baba Ambedkar did what is considered to be the revolutionary act to institute the Dhamma-Diksha. And Dhamma-Diksha is very crucial. We can make our children aware that they are supposed to follow the Buddha, Dhamma, and the Sangha as their guiding lights. And we can institute the Dhamma-Diksha. And we have seen that time and again that there are a lot of ceremonies where the people are following in the footsteps of Baba Saheb Ambedkar. Recently, in Gujarat, on Baba Saheb's birth anniversary, there was a big Dhamma-Diksha. So the right word for what Baba Saheb Ambedkar did was, the Dhamma-Diksha. And when the program of the 14th October was announced, it was announced as the Dhamma-Diksha. And we know that Baba Ambedkar didn't do anything unconsciously. He thought through clearly. He understood everything clearly. And then he took the action. So Dhamma-Diksha is a very revolutionary act, even for the Buddhism itself. Not only for the Buddhists in India, but for the Buddhists throughout the world, that this is a very important sort of a revolutionary act of instituting what is called the Dhamma-Diksha. So after clarifying the bond of arms between the laities and upasakas, a lot of things become clear to us in terms of how we can organize the laities today. And Baba Ambedkar had this vision in his mind to have a sangha which will include the both, the upasakas and the bhikshus, and he has tried to organize the Buddhists throughout various things at local level in terms of the panchayat, both the panchayat. At the level of nation, we have, the Buddhist Society of India, that was at the level of the nation. And he was always the part of the World Buddhist Mission. When the incipient World Fellowship of Buddhism was taking place, the organization was forming, Baba Ambedkar was very much the part and parcel of that organization, the vision of the Buddhist mission for the world. So you see, now we have to think and rethink in terms of how we can begin to organize the Buddhists in various ways, at the local level, at the ground level, all the way up to the national level, and all the way up to the global level, in order to, make Buddhism a living force in not only India, but throughout the world. So I think this particular section and the section on Dhamma-Diksha is so vitally important. And I think we have to, take the Dhamma-Diksha consciously to mark our initiation in the Buddha's Dhamma, and thus commit ourselves to the Buddha, Dhamma, and the Sangha. So now I will move on to the second part of this beautiful exploration: mutual influence. However, the bond of arms was enough for a bhikkhu to reform an erring member of the laity. So the bond of arms was enough for both the bhikshus and the ladies, because the bhikshus were depending on the ladies. They couldn't ignore the ladies or their complaints. So in this connection, the following rules mentioned in the Anguttara Nikaya are worthy of attention. In addition to these prescriptions, the laity had a general right to complain against a bhikkhu to other bhikkhus against any mischief or misconduct. So if a bhikkhu conducts any mischief or misconduct, the laity could intimate that to the bhikshu sangha or to the members of the bhikshu or another bhikkhu, and thus they can initiate the process of reforming the members of the sangha. The moment the complaint reached the Buddha and he has verified it, the relevant rule in the Vinaya Pitak was amended to make the repetition of such a conduct an offense against the sangha. See, when the sangha began, initially there were no Vinaya rules, because all the people were well trained in the Dhamma, and they didn't need the rules as such, because they spontaneously behaved in accordance with the Dhamma. But when the sangha became larger and larger, and when more and more people joined the bhikkhu sangha, it was becoming very difficult to maintain that kind of the sanctity of the organization, and therefore whenever the complaints were received by the Buddha, the rules of Vinayas were formed, and that's how the Vinaya came into existence. Upon the complaints of the people that this particular monk is transgressing this, it is not a good conduct, it's a bad conduct. And when the Buddha came to understand it, he inquired into it, and when he established that this is not in accordance with the Dhamma that he teaches, he made the rules of the Vinaya. So that's how the Vinaya Pitaka came into being. And the verse number 5 in this particular subpart, the Vinaya Pitaka is nothing but redress of the complaints of the ladies. Such was the relation between the bhikkhu and the ladies. So there was this unbreakable cord or bond between the ladies and the bhikkhus. But when the bhikkhu sangha was gone, the ladies being unorganized, not having initiation into the Dhamma, the Buddhism, one of the reasons for the decline of the Buddhism was this, that there was no Sangha-Diksha. There was no institutionalization of the lay persons, the lacuna, the bigger problem that Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar solved by instituting what is called the Dhamma-Diksha. Very critical, very important point. So I'm going to now switch on to the subpart 3, which is the Dhamma of the Bhikkhu and the Dhamma of Upasaka. And this is very important for us to understand, because in one of the latest, Babasaheb Ambedkar said that he's fond of, he advocates what is called the humanistic Buddhism, the human-centric Buddhism, and not the monastic Buddhism, the monk-centric Buddhism. And this is a very vital point on which depends the future of the Dhamma, the Buddha Dhamma. And we have to think very, very carefully about the Dhamma of the Bhikkhu and the Dhamma of the Upasaka. Very, very important discussion that Babasaheb Ambedkar had in this particular subpart of the Buddha and his Dhamma. And I think it's very vitally important to understand this particular section. So let me read it through, and then I will come back and gloss over some of the very important vital points that are mentioned here by Babasaheb. So let's begin with the verse number 1. Some critics of Buddhism allege that Buddhism is not a religion. So they claim that the Buddhism is not religion. And Babasaheb Ambedkar has previously answered this question as to how Buddhism brings in what is lacking in the religions. And he says that the religion can be your personal matter. The Dhamma is not your personal matter. It has to do with the larger ethics of the society. So Babasaheb says, no attention should be paid to such criticism. But if any reply is to be given, it is that Buddhism is the only real religion, and those who do not accept this must revise their definition of religion. What a proud Buddhist Babasaheb Ambedkar is. What a fundamental clarity. What a depth of faith Babasaheb Ambedkar had in the Buddha Dhamma and the Sangha. He says that we don't have to reply to this criticism. But if we have to say that Buddhism is the only real religion. Isn't it? And those who do not accept this must revise their definition of religion. And he says in the verse number 3, other critics do not go so far as this. What they say is that Buddhism as a religion is concerned only with the bhikkhus. They say that Buddhism is only for the monastics. The Buddhism is only for the monks and the nuns. What they say is that Buddhism as a religion is concerned only with the bhikkhu. It does not concern itself with the common man. Buddhism kept the common man outside its spell. That's what the critics of the Buddhism say, that it has nothing for the common man. Whatever there is in Buddhism, it's only for the monastics or those people who have gone forth or become homeless. And that's not true. As Baba Ambedkar says and clarifies that Buddhism is deep down humanistic. It talks to every human being. It is the common man is at the center of it, as Baba Ambedkar says. The man and it's his mind is at the center of the Buddha's Dhamma. That's what Baba Ambedkar says in this beautiful book. And if we look at it, that the verse number 4, the references to the bhikkhu occur so often in the dialogues of the Buddha that they go to strengthen the criticism. Because see, if you look at the Sutta Pitaka, if you look at Vinaya Pitaka, it's all about bhikshus everywhere. He's talking to the monks, he's talking to the nuns, but at the same time, the Buddha is talking to the kings, the Buddha is talking to the farmers, the Buddha is talking to the philosophers, the Buddha is talking to the common man as well. He's talking to the lay people. And this section very much makes it clear. Very important section in the Buddhism. You see, it therefore becomes necessary to make the matter clear. Was the Dhamma common to both? Was the Dhamma common to both? Or is there any part of the Dhamma which is binding on the bhikkhu but not so on the laity? Merely because the sermons were addressed to the gathering of the bhikkhus, it must not be supposed that what was preached was intended to apply to them only. What was preached applied to both. So the Buddha was talking to the human being. He was not talking to the monk or nuns or upasaka or upas. He's talking to the human being and he's trying to address the suffering of everyone. So as verse number 7 makes it clear, merely because the sermons were addressed to the gathering of the bhikkhus, it must not be supposed that what was preached was intended to apply to them only. What was preached applied to both. That the Buddha had the laity in mind when he preached. The Panchashil, Ashtanga Marga, the Paramitas is quite clear from the very nature of the things, and no argument, really speaking, is necessary. So we have gone through all these teachings, the teachings of Panchashil, the teaching of Ashtanga Marga, Noble Eightfold Path, and the Paramitas. It's very clear that, the content and the subject matter is so clear that we don't need any argument that, the Dhamma is common to both. Dhamma is, Dhamma is for everyone. Whether you are upasaka or bhikkhu or anybody, the Dhamma is the same. Now verse number 9, listen carefully. It is those who have not left their homes and who are engaged in active life that Panchashil, Ashtanga Marga and Paramitas are necessary. You see, once you leave your home, you do not have any possessions, you do not indulge into the life of family, you do not take part in drinking, you do not party. So automatically, when you become a part of the Bhikkhu Sangha or when you take ordination as a Bhikkhu, Panchashila becomes, they are important, but they becomes like, natural to that lifestyle. Because for your food, you are dependent on others. You don't have a need to kill, isn't it? For your food. Ashtanga Marga, similarly, there is an element of Samyak Ajivika, isn't it? So once we enter into the, Bhikkhu Sangha or Bhikshuni Sangha, this Ashtanga Marga practice becomes easy. And the Paramitas are, they can be practiced very easily. But, when you are engaged in the active life, these are very important when you come in contact with the people. When it is very important to, when you are not living the disengaged life from the world, isn't it? You are not living a monastic life. You are very much part of the world. It is they who are likely to transgress them and not the bhikkhus who has left home, who is not engaged in active life and who is not likely to transgress them. Now, this 10 points is very crucial, very critical, very important. When the Buddha therefore started preaching his Dhamma, it must be principally for the laity. Dhamma is for all. It is not the exclusive domain of the monastics. It is not the exclusive domain of the bhikkhus or the bhikkhunis. For that matter, not even the upasakas and the upasikas. The Dhamma is a domain for all. It belongs to all human beings. It belongs to humanity. So it is not, however, necessary to rely merely on inference. You see, the Baba Sahib is a very clear thinker. He says that I won't rely just on the inference, on the logic. He says that I am going to provide you the direct evidence to prove the criticism. And he provides the direct criticism. Let's look at it as to how Baba Sahib Ambedkar provides the direct evidence of his statements. I like, the way Baba Sahib Ambedkar deals with the subjects. He's not speculative. He's not somebody who is dogmatic. He will open up the things for us to see for ourselves. He similarly does for the Tripitaka. Through the Buddha and Islam, he opens up the Tripitaka. He brings out various strands in the Tripitaka and make us see for ourselves what it is. Similarly, in this section, he doesn't just base his thinking on merely inferences. He says that I can provide you the direct evidence for that, and here is the direct evidence. Reference may be made to the following sermon. Once, while the Lord was staying at Shravasti in Jeta's grove, in Anathapindika's plains, there came to him the lay follower Dhammika, with other 500 lay followers, who after due salutations took his seat to one side and addressed the Lord as follows. So Dhammika with his 500 Upasakas went to see the Buddha, and the place is Anathapindika's plains in Shravasti, and there they met the Lord. And he asked the question to the Buddha. What conduct, O Lord, perfects both those that are bhikkhus and those that are only upasakas, those who are homeless and those who are not? So what is the conduct for the bhikkhus and for the upasakas, for the homeless and the homebound? It is said that there is nothing like homeless and homebound in Buddhism. These are all the categories which are, cannot be held very tightly. So a monk is a very, I would say, it's not a strict categorization, isn't it? So one of the examples is this, that, the Buddha was a bhikkhu. Was he a bhikkhu? Because, if you see the Buddha anywhere, anytime, he has this hair. His head is not tonsured. In other words, he's representing the universality of his teaching. Appeals to everybody, isn't it? So the Buddha is, we have not imagined the Buddha in terms of his head shaved, isn't it? So when the image of the Buddha came, it came out very beautifully with hair, isn't it? So who was the Buddha? So he represented all. He was homebound. He was not homebound, of course. He was homeless, but he also represented the homebound people. So it doesn't matter in the latter tradition of the Buddhism that it doesn't matter whether you're homebound or homeless, isn't it? Once you commit yourself to the Buddha, Dhamma, and the Sangha, it doesn't matter where you live. So, but here, for the sake of argument, Baba Sahib Ambedkar has given a very beautiful evidence here, and we are going to look into that evidence. So this is how the Buddha answers. The Dhammika says that let the almsman seated round with this lay followers learn the saving truth. Please tell us the truth, how we should conduct and how the bhikshu should conduct. The blessed Lord said, give ear. See, it's a simple 2 words, but very important. Whenever we listen to the Dhamma, we give our ears, isn't it? Yoniso mansikar, try to understand with the open mind, not with a closed mind. The Buddha will always encourage this attitude. He says, give ear, almsman, hear, and keep the rules prescribed. He says, give ear. Just giving ear is not important. He says, hear, and keep the rules prescribed. So this is for the alms, this is for the bhikshus. He says, go not thy round when noon is past. Betike sick alms. Snares greet the untimely guests. Very beautiful. He says that don't go for the alms round after the noon. There is a prescribed time to go for the alms round for the bhikshus. And the Buddha says, don't go after the time is past. Follow the rule. Take the alms on the time in the prescribed duration. So if we go untimely, then there are a lot of troubles for the person who is an untimely guest. So for an untimely guest, there are troubles, there are bonds, there are bondages. So the Buddha says, in other words, is to follow the discipline, follow the rules, which are meant for you to, walk on the path straight away. Before thou seek thy milk, clear do thou thy mind of just for forms, sounds, orders, tests, and what is called the touch. Okay, not luck. This is a mistake here, typographical mistake. If you are having the copy of the Buddha Dhamma, the strike down the word luck and put touch. Okay, because these are the 5 objects of senses. So there is a typographical error in this part of the Buddha Dhamma. Strike down the word luck. It's touch. So he said, the Buddha says that, oh bhikshus, before you go and take your food, seek your meal, you clear your senses, clear your mind of the attachment to the sensory world, to the forms, sounds, orders, taste, and touch. So in other words, Buddha is saying that, create this detachment from the sensory consciousness. Abide in the higher consciousness. Then thine arm received, return alone to sit apart and think with fixed mind that never stage abroad. Then after you take your food, you fix your mind, focus your mind, practice the mindfulness, the satipatthana. So this is very interesting. So before meal, you have to clean your senses. You have to clean your indriyas of work. After it, you have to practice the focus of the mind. Very beautifully taught by the Buddha in a very few verses. That's what the bhikshu is supposed to do. In talk with the pious folk, almsman, let thy theme be doctrine. So whenever you talk, only talk about the Dhamma. There is no scope for any frivolous talks. Talk only of the Dhamma. Treat alms, sell, bed, water, and rinsings just as means and nothing more. So whatever even possession you have, whatever activities you do, whatever possessions a bhikkhu have, they are just for the sake of means. They are not to be hold on to. The bhikkhu is supposed to hold on to nothing whatsoever. Completely abide in the domain of Shunya. Detachment, total detachment. So everything that the bhikshus have, they have to treat it as means, nothing more. Such reason use will leave an almsman and unstained as lotus leaf, whereon no drop of water rest. See, beautiful. So the bhikshu is supposed to live like a lotus, though in the world, not attached to the world, pure, unstained by the worldly things. And this ideal, I think, is for everybody, isn't it? Complete detachment from the muck of the world. Whatever we need just for the sake of sustaining ourselves. So this is what the Buddha taught and thought about the bhikkhu. I now pass to the conduct which perfects the lay followers. To them I say, to the lay followers, what the Buddha says, repetition of what has happened in the earlier sections of Buddha and Dhamma, but in a different way. This is what appeals to me about Buddha and Dhamma. The same thing is looked at from a different point, taught in a different way, framed in a different way, to emphasize the point. You see, the method of persuasion of Baba Ambedkar is so lively, isn't it? So, I would say so persuasive in a word that, when we try to explore something from all different perspectives, using the different frameworks to understand the same thing, we have a very, very profound understanding of it. Now, pay attention. Slay not, nor doom to death, nor sanction slaughter. Do no violence to aught that lives, strong or weak. Love all living beings. See how you can elaborate the very first precept, Panati Pata Veramani. You see how many dimensions it opens when we think the way Baba Ambedkar thought about the precepts. You see, slay not, nor doom to death, nor sanction slaughter. Don't even allow the slaughter. Don't even allow the violence to take place. Do no violence to aught that lives, strong or weak, whoever they are, strong or weak, doesn't matter. Do not allow violence. And how do we do that? Love all living beings. You see, the word all, sabba, is very important. The word sabba is so important. All. Love all living beings. Love every living being. The second precept, no layman wittingly should thieve or order theft. You should not only thieve, but we also should not order theft. Take but what others give. We are supposed to take only what others give. We cannot take anything forcibly. Shun incontinence as it were a pit of fire. See, the sensuality or the sensual pleasure is likened with the pit of fire. Unfailing continence. Debauch no wedded wife. The very self-explanatory, very clear. The third precept. The fourth precept. In conclaves, courts, let him not prompt or sanction lies. Let him renounce untruth. So, in a society, in a community, renounce the untruth. Speak only the truth. In the conclaves, courts, anywhere you are, in the company of the people. Observe this law. The fifth precept, shun drink. Don't drink. Make no man drink. It is not enough that you quit drinking. It's also important to not make other men drink. Sanction no drinking. Don't celebrate drinking. Mark how drink to madness leads. So when we are drunk, it leads to madness. It clouds our minds. It doesn't let us think clearly, thoroughly. Through drink, full sin, and eggs lax brethren onto sin. So flee this maddening vice. The habit of drinking, Baba Ambedkar says, maddening vice. This folly, bliss of fools. Only the fools will delight in intoxicating their minds. And he brings all this together into a single verse, conclusion of the Panchashil. Slay not, steal not, lie not, from strong drink, keep away, refrain from lechery. So make thy Sabbath vows as week succeeds week, and keep with pious hearts this eightfold festival. Beautiful. You see, you have to practice, the regularly. We talk about the upasas, but it's our daily thing. Eightfold festival. You see, the noble eightfold path is described as a festival. You see, as a joyful thing to abide or live by the eightfold path. At morning, these vows performed with pious, thankful heart. You see, we undertake the precepts with the heart of devotion, with the thankful heart, ever grateful to the Buddha. Be wise, and of thy means give almsmen food and drink. And then we can give the bhikshus, or those who are homeless, the food and the drinks, we can give them. Cherish thy parents well. Follow a righteous trade. Thus shall the layman staunch reach realms of light above. Isn't it? If you do this enough, we reach the light above. The light above is a very beautiful metaphor for the Nibbana. Light above. It will thus be seen that the Dhamma was the same for the both. The Dhamma was the same for the Upasaka and the lay person. There is no difference when it comes to the Dhamma. There are, of course, differences in the call made upon the two. So the responsibilities of the two differ. There is a difference in the call made upon the two, but there is no difference fundamentally in terms of the practice of Dhamma. A bhikkhu must take 5 vows. So the 5 precepts the bhikshus must take as a vows. He must take the vow that he shall not kill. He must take the vow that he shall not appropriate to himself property of another, which has not been given to him. He must take the vow that he shall never tell a lie. He must take the vow that he shall not try to have the carnal knowledge of women, and in the case of women, men. He must take the vow that he shall never drink any intoxicating drink. All these rules are binding upon the layman as well. The only difference lies in this. With the bhikkhu, they are vows which are not to be transgressed. With the layman, they are moral obligations to be voluntarily honored. Besides, there are two other differences which are noteworthy. A bhikkhu cannot have private property, a layman can have. So the bhikkhu can have the private property, the bhikkhu cannot have the private property, but the layman can amass the wealth. There is no glorification or valorization of the poverty in Buddhism, isn't it? When at the time in India, the India was so rich that they could feed the homeless people, isn't it? The bhikshus will have no problem in getting the alms for them. I don't know what is going to happen in today's India. So you see, a bhikkhu cannot have private property, a layman can have. A bhikkhu is free to enter parinibban. Nibbana is enough for a layman. This is a very complicated point that the bhikkhu can attain parinibban. There are many different definitions of nibban and parinibban, but what we understand in terms of the the understanding in the context of the Buddha and Dhamma, that nibban is the noble eightfold path. It is compulsory for both of them. And the parinibban is defined as the nibbana after the death. And as we have seen, that we are not so much concerned about what happens after the death. We practice here and now. So these are the similarities and the differences between the bhikkhu and the layman. Dhamma, however, is the same for both. Underline this words. Dhamma, however, is the same for both. So what we have seen in a few pages is a profound sort of the understanding for not only the bhikkhus and the layperson, but for all of us, isn't it? To be able to have the future for Buddhism, to be able to practice. The Dhamma is the same for both. There is no difference when it comes to the practice of Dhamma. Dhamma is the same for the Buddha, for the bhikshu, for the layperson. It's same. There is no difference at all. So what I would do now, I will stop here and I will open up the class for any comments or any discussion.
"22" was are given when it is dharmantar from one religion to another. Dhamma-Diksha. So when the individual is born in Buddhist family, so till which sanskar vidhi is given?
See, there is a book, Buddha Sanskar Part. Baba Ambedkar has written
Yeah.
Sanskar Part, right?
Yeah.
There are two books that we have to have in our homes: the Buddha Puja Part and the Buddha Sanskar Part. So there is, of course, that. And this business of converting from one religion to another is a very strange business. There is nothing like, we renounced Hinduism and entered into Buddhism. It's not like that, because we never had any religion. How can the people who are outside the fold of a religion can have a religion? So we never had religion. The what is called Baba Sahib statement that I will not die as a Hindu is a wrong statement. What Baba Ambedkar actually meant was that he won't die calling himself a Hindu. Now there is a difference. Me Hindu manun marnar nahi. He didn't say that me Hindu manun marnar nahi. He said me Hindu manvat marnar nahi. That's what is there in Marathi. I won't die calling myself a Hindu. Isn't it? So, he has nothing to do with the Hinduism. Our community has nothing to do with Hinduism, even very early on. So now we have to correct some of the misunderstanding of the past, that, it's conversion from Hinduism to Buddhism. It's not like that. We never had Hinduism as a religion. We never belonged to Hinduism. We never practiced Hinduism. Isn't it? We might have practiced by way of imitation. There was no ceremony there is no ceremony for the 85% of the people to be called Hindus. Isn't it? It's just the imitation and nothing else. There is no ceremony. We were never baptized into Hinduism. So how can we be Hindus? So what Baba Samad is saying, that I won't declare calling myself a Hindu. A radical difference between dying as a Hindu. Isn't it? He never addressed himself as a Hindu. When it came to addressing himself, he was already in the awe of Buddhism. He had already had renunciation, very early on. And there was a tradition of, Satya Shodhak Samaj. His father was very much Satya Shodhak. His teacher in India, Dada Kiruskar, didn't belong to Hinduism. He was a Satya Shodhak. So you see, this idea of, taking this, converting from one religion of another is a very, wrong idea. he declared that I won't call myself a Hindu. I won't die calling myself a Hindu, declaring myself. I'm not that. So the 22 vows have to be understood in the light of this. That don't practice what the gods of others. These are not our gods. How can the gods who and their religion which degrades us can be our religion? So we don't accept their gods. How can we accept the gods of others? We cannot. So these first few vows are very clear. It's that we don't worship them. We do not belong to them. We don't call ourselves that we belong to them. We don't worship them. Very simple. It is nothing against Hinduism because we were never Hindus. We are never Hindus. How can we be Hindus and at the same time treated like the untouchables? A complete contradiction. Anything else?
There is, means after birth, we cannot consider that we are born in this religion. So we have to take a particular
Good point.
at 6 or 7 years age.
We have
Dhamma-Diksha.
to do it again and again. See, I remember from my childhood, every occasion there was. It was started with the 3-7 Panchashil. Whether there is a birthday, where there is a death, where there is a celebration of anything, marriage. The marriage is supposed to be, a secular affair in Buddhism. It has nothing to do with the religion. But, in the countries like Sri Lanka, there are secular marriages, and after that you go and seek the blessings of the blessed Sangha. But in now we have to institutionalize the Buddhist marriage system. Why not? What's wrong in there? You
So
see,
saying that we because we are born in Buddhist family, so we are Buddhist is not fair enough. So we deliberately have to take Dhamma-Diksha.
Yes. We have to do it again and again. Maybe daily. No issues with that. But as a public act is very important. The Dhamma-Diksha was a public act that Baba Ambedkar did. And it made a profound impact on the world. It made a profound impact on the community. Isn't it? When he took the Dhamma-Diksha, it's as if the entire community took the Diksha with him. We are already ordained. The followers of Baba Ambedkar, wherever they belong, they are already ordained. They already have, this Dhamma-Diksha, but now we have to institutionalize it in our societies, communities, in the families, and so on and so forth. So it's 11:50, and if there is nothing on your mind, maybe we can stop here.
So Bhante Vimalkirti gives Dhamma-Diksha at say 7 years of age when the child starts. So that is also good, no?
Good practice. Very good practice. Very good practice. So it is not necessary that a monk gives it. Even a good layman can give it. Alka madam, you can also give it.
Yes.
In today's lesson, can we take this as a takeaway line from the session? Buddha has preached to Dhamma to all. Means it's an equal opportunity to enter, walk, and attain.
Yeah.
It's open for all.
Yeah. He gave the humans the Dhamma. He advocated for what is called the humanistic Buddhism, not for the monastic Buddhism. He batted for the what is called the humanistic Buddhism for all, not just exclusive category of a few people that Dhamma was offered. There is a lot more to this, and as we explore more in our lives, in our societies, we can begin to find a lot of meaningful teachings here. As I say that, discovering the insights in the Buddha and his Dhamma is a lifelong process. So maybe we should stop here today.
Sure, sir.
Okay. So thank you so much for joining, and see you in the next class.